So focus. You're doing it right now. You're always doing it, at least when you're awake. Why don't we start by bringing our attention or focusing our attention in our bodies just to get centered. You can keep your eyes open or close them. Focusing has to do with attention. Where your attention is, you can create and learn and interact and experience. And where your attention, if your attention is not on anything you want it to be on, then you have no power to create or experience or learn in those areas. So let's start by just focusing with our eyes. So move your attention off the screen to something behind the screen. And if you look far away, you notice that your eyes will focus there. And if you look close up, your eyes will focus there. Sometimes it takes a second for things to come into focus. And you might be able to actively unfocus your eyes. So rather than looking at something in particular, you're taking in your peripheral vision, but your eyes are unfocused. So just notice how this works in the visual context. Because this is an example of how it works in every context. Then you can do it with sound now. So you're paying attention to what I'm saying. I can hear the air conditioner in the background. I can hear the occasional New York City honking in the background. And I can attend to any one of those sounds. Maybe if there's a car going by that's playing music, I can give my attention to that sound and pick up the music. There was a horn right there. So there are things that you can give your attention to. And this is the thing we want to do more of, being able to give our attention to things. Right? And now there's the other side, which is that oftentimes we're not in control of our attention. The most glaring example of this that I remember, I think most prominently in high school and college, is when you're taking an exam and you're already wound up and someone is like tapping their pen on the table over, like, fiddling with something and making noise a table over from you while you're taking the test. And you're trying to give your attention to the exam, but all of your attention is going to this clicking sound, right? And it's like you don't want it to go there, but it's going there. And this is also kind of how it works in our lives, where our attention goes to some sort of distraction. It goes to Facebook or something else, some social media. It goes to the fact that there's plants that could be watered in our apartment. It could be anything. Something's out of sorts that we need to put in place, but it's not the most essential or important action to be taken right now. It's just something that's catching your attention. And this is called like firefighter mode in some contexts and work contexts often, where it's just the thing that's blowing up right now that needs the most attention, because if there's a fire, that probably needs your attention more than anything else. But there's not always like fires that are really fires. They're just things that are grabbing our attention. So take a second to just check in with yourself right now and notice what are the things that, we'll say, take your attention. What are the activities, the distractions, you could call them, or the things you do that inhibit your ability to have attention or to focus, right? if you are eating a lot to the point where your stomach starts to hurt, then you split your attention between your belly hurting and everything else. And so you can't give your attention to other things because you kind of feel too full. Or maybe you eat in such a way that you don't feel too full, but you just feel tired. Often this is why eating is used as a coping mechanism for some sort of thing we want to avoid, right? Emotional eating is, I'm eating to a place where my attention can't focus on the emotion that is painful. Oftentimes when things are like searing attention, we're trying to put our attention somewhere. It's usually that the attention would just be better placed somewhere else right now. Just for a moment even, right? So if you're working on a project and you're trying to force it through, usually if there's an emotional signal, it's telling you something. Well, what is this signaling? And it might say, this isn't the next action right now. You're just fixated on pushing this through. The next action is checking in with Teresa to see how she wants to do it. All right. And there's fear because, Teresa doesn't respond for like 3 days to email. So, and this needs to be done by Monday. So, right. So here's a conundrum. So you could, but as soon as you pull the conundrum out into the open, you can assess, well, how important is it that we reach Teresa? And maybe I can just call her. And she might be upset by that, but that's okay. This is what has to happen. And, that's fine. So you're sort of pulling the conundrum into consciousness rather than going unconscious into the distraction. You're staying with it because you allowed yourself to go where the attention wanted to go. It goes to a distraction. You might have a reminder there to say, well, let's check in. Eventually, when you notice your attention drifting from what you're doing, you're like, oh, where is the attention going? Oh, it's going to something. Oh, it's going to something because I'm feeling something. What am I feeling? What's the feeling tied to? Feeling's tied to this. What's the thing that's causing the feeling? It's this situation. Where is my power in this situation? If there's no power, right? If it's just that, the election's coming up and I can only do one thing, which is vote and maybe call senators and maybe tweet about it or something like that. Then you take the action if that's what feels right to do, or you notice that you don't have influence in that situation. And you say, well, given my circumstances and the influence in the world that I do have, where do I want to give my attention? Amanda is asking, where does procrastination fall into the mix? I struggle with focus when it comes to pacing. I tend to cram in things before deadlines, tasks do get done. Okay, so a cram, it's just not at a pace that feels good. So cramming and procrastination. Well, this is a strategy that kind of works when fear focuses attention. So if there's literally a fire, there's going to be a reaction in your body, a stress response that says, I need to deal with that. Or if there's a tiger or a bear or a skunk or anything that whatever is a threat in some way, your attention's going to go there, right? And same with the deadline. The deadline fear being, what happens if I don't do this? What will people think of me? All of those things, right? So what we want to look at with that is the procrastination cramming pattern. Is there something that's causing us to not be able to give attention to the thing that we're set up to do? And then ultimately, at the very last minute, we have this rush of fear that focuses attention, right? If there is a tiger right there, you're not going to be paying attention to me talking. Your attention is going to be with what should I do about this tiger, right? So that is how the cramming mechanism works, is that at some point you get to a place that there's enough fear that it focuses your attention. It doesn't feel good. It's exhausting because you're so stressed and it's fatiguing. You kind of also, in that pattern, you sidestep a lot of decisions and force decisions to be made sort of instinctually rather than, should I head this way with this thing or that way? Because a month before the thing is due, you can sit and deliberate that for 3 days, but maybe you don't want to spend 3 days deliberating that. And so you procrastinate that until you have to make a split-second decision 2 days before, just because, you really didn't want to spend that much time debating it. So if you're able to be aware of that, then if you look at what's actually causing the procrastination, it's, I don't want to dedicate a whole month of my life to this project. I want to dedicate, 4.5 hours. And so when I start, I've sort of checked in about how do I want to handle this project? Okay, I want to spend about this much time. And we're really bad as humans at estimating time with things. Procrastination has this pattern where there's something that's causing us to run away from the project. And if we follow the emotion, we figure out what the conundrum is, what the question is, what the obstacle is. And the obstacle becomes your new assignment, your new project, right? You don't have to spend an infinite amount of time on it, but you're just figuring out what is the block? What is the feeling tied to? And you only get better at associating the feeling with the thing that it's actually tied to by paying attention to it, by experimenting, by playing with it, by actually sitting with the feeling.